to Raven's Ramblings, Musings of a Southern Witch. I am Raven, your host for this chaos journey. Tonight we're going to be, or today, I guess, depending on what time you're listening to this. I am recording this at 3:50 a.m. because, well, I work night shift, so everything kind of stays on that schedule. So, tonight we're going to be talking about casting circles and their meanings and different ways you can do it and things like that. So, the circle itself has always been seen as sacred. It's, what you give to your love when you get married, a wedding ring, a circle. There's no beginning, there's no end, it just is. So, circles of the ancient times sometimes were just drawn in dirt, or whatever type of flooring or outside or whatever. Uh, in some instances, they use things like flour or salt to mark out those sacred circles. Some people plant flowers in a circle, out in their yard and do it like that. And, whatever you choose to do is perfectly fine. Me personally, I do not have a physical representation of the full circle when I cast, but you do whatever works for you. One of the most famous sacred circles is Stonehenge in England. And, there's been speculation over the centuries of what it meant and what they did with it in the ancient times. And, they do have celebrations there for the solstices, and it's absolutely fascinating to me and a lot of people, I guess, of how the sun aligns with certain points and stuff, and it's just absolutely amazing that something like that has survived for this long. It's fabulous. So different uses for circles. Some people use them to, or they consider it to keep unwanted energy out of a space, like unwanted spirits, demons, that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, my cat is attacking something behind me. If you hear a weird scratching noise, just pay no attention to that. Everything in my house is chaos, so that's just one more thing. Um, Me personally, I use it to keep out that unwanted energy when I'm doing a more formal ritual. And I also use it, and most do, to keep working energy in the circle. So you can, put your circle up, and it allows that containment of the energy that you're working with to continue to build and build and build until you release it into whatever you're working on. And some people just kind of hold on to it and then let it dissipate on its own. And whatever you're doing, that's fine. It's your magic. It's your witchcraft. You do you, boo. Okay, that is the beauty of what we do. It's different for everyone, and all these ways are correct. So, high magic is almost always going to call for a sacred circle. Now, they are way more specific on their dimensions in high magic. It depends on how many people are involved, what their intentions for the ritual are going to be. Um, Most coven circles, which are for mainly smaller covens, are around 9 feet in diameter. And this is coming from Buckland's book too. Um, that's what you would consider a more precise or formal circle. And then they would consider a more personal circle to be about 5 foot in diameter. Just enough space for you and your tools and what you're kind of working with and doing. Um, Me personally, I do not measure that mess out. I do not have time for that. And sometimes I'm working in limited space. I may not have a full 5 foot. I may just have the chair I'm sitting in or sitting on the floor, and just that immediate space around me is what I see as my circle. Now, I also like want to mention that when I say circle, it's not just that wall or boundary uh, going around you, on the outside of you. It's really, to me, in my practice, it's like a bubble. There is that space above my head. There's that space below my body, and I actually envision mine going down into the earth and picking up part of that. So it's a circle but a bubble all at the same time, at least in my mind. Now, I don't know if everybody thinks that way. Maybe they do. Some people I know think of it as like a dome. So it just starts at ground level and makes that dome over the person and their tools. I like to envision it going all the way down into the earth. That's what works in my craft. So, for your circles, most of them formally start in the east, and you're going to draw it clockwise. So you're always going to remember to finish where you start. So if you do happen to start in the north, you want to make sure you finish in the north, or else you're not going to have that completeness. Because we're wanting to seal this and actually hold that space. So most people will start in the east, and then they're going to work around to the south, and then the west, and then the north, and then back to the east. So when personally, I like to use candles to mark my space, to mark my cardinal directions. It just helps me with visualizing where my boundary is, because like I said, I don't put out a full physical circle of salt or dirt or rocks or flowers or whatever, because that's just not feasible in my life. So I personally use candles, but that's just, like I said, that's just me. You do you. Whatever you do, that's okay. If it works for you, it works for you. So, marking your directions, a white candle is always acceptable because white is fairly neutral. So, it's going to go with whatever element and stuff that you're dealing with. So, your elements also have color associations, and we'll get more into that later on. But the basics, in the east is air, and yellow. Yellow is our color for east. And honestly, those things are still a little bit up for negotiation, also. If in your heart of hearts, east feels more like a dark blue, then that's what's going to work for you best. There is no law, let's say, that says you have to adhere to what the general rule is. If south makes you feel cold and icy, well, that seems weird because it's hot as hell in the south, but there's nothing wrong with being a little weird either. So it just depends. But the general rule is east is yellow and air. Now you can represent air with feathers, or I've seen people use little fans. Not necessarily, I mean, you could use like a battery fan or a plug in fan, but like a hand fan, like a Japanese fan, something like that. Something that's going to represent air for you. Some people use leaves for air because of the fluttering of the leaves in fall. And, us witches, we like leaves. So most of us probably have a cool leaf that we've picked up from somewhere that we might could use for that. Now, moving on from the east would be the south. For me, south is red. It's fire. So you can use a candle You could use a small cauldron with a small thing of charcoal burning, or, you know, whatever represents that to you. Um, I've seen matches, just laid out matches, knowing that those could strike a fire. People could use that. It's maybe all you have is a Bic lighter, and that represents fire for you. Totally okay. You do you. Okay. Um, from the south, we're gonna move to the west. For me, blue is west because west is water. Water is blue. Now you could use a chalice. That's what is most common. A chalice with some water in it. That is the most common, honestly. That's what I use. From the west, you're going to move up to the north. Now, north is earth and greenery. So you could have a small dish of dirt, or you could have a green plant, or just anything. You know, maybe you have a small pile of twigs, and that's what represents earth for you. Any of those things is totally okay. But like I said, I usually use candles in my practice. So I'm going to have a yellow candle, a red candle, a blue candle, and a green candle. And I usually have one in white for spirit, for in the middle. And that's just my good neutral. Now, if I don't have all of those colors of candles because I've been full on ADHD and have not paid attention, and I have run out of red candles. Okay, use a white one. Hell, if you don't have anything but purple ones, use a purple one. You know, it's all about your intentions with it. So, whatever your intentions are, that's what's going to make this effective. All of these things that we're using are just tools. You do not need any of these things to make your witchcraft, your practice, your magic happen. All of that comes from within you. You know, your intentions, your energy, your focus, all of that is what really makes all this work. Okay? The candles and the cauldrons and all these things, these are just physical representations that help visualize what you're trying to do. That's it. You don't need anything to practice witchcraft. You can sit in your recliner with reruns of ER going in the background and practice your magic. If you have that kind of focus and don't need those things, you don't have to use them. Me personally, ADHD, I'm going to have something that's going to keep my attention because I'm going to squirrel. You know, it's that one sheep, two sheep, a Macarena kind of thing. It just, I can't focus enough without something calling my visual attention to make me do what I'm supposed to be doing and to stay on task. I mean, that's why you hear papers rattling every time I do this, because I will get distracted and squirrel. So, back to our circles. See, there I go, squirreling, chaos. Back to our circles. Now, within that circle, before you set your circle up, you want to make sure you do have any tools that you're wanting to use. You may have a small altar that you set up in there. If it's a different place from where you would normally have your altar set up, you may not bring all of it into your circle. You may only bring the tools and ingredients that you need for the specific purpose of what you're doing, and that's fine. That's not a big deal. I personally will go out onto my back porch for very specific, more intense magical workings. Because it kind of takes the distraction away from everything in my house, which is, 43 animals and the air conditioner and the TV and all that stuff. Now, for basic stuff, then I'm just trying to do something really quick and easy, then I will do it in my cave, my altar room. Now, this is my little witchy sanctuary that my wife helped me put together, where I have a permanent altar set up. I have all of my herbs within reach, all of my books and moon water, and all the little things. So when I set my circle in my altar room, or my cave I call it, I broaden my circle to encompass the whole room. That way, all of my things are in my circle with me. I visualize that bubble going up into my attic and down past, the foundation of my home, and just it's a really big circle for me. So it goes past that personal circle of 5 feet that Buckland's talks about. But that's easier for me because sometimes I don't really know what I'm going to need. I let my intuition and my gut kind of guide me to things. Um, because I have a hard time studying. I do. Uh, Once again, that's how I got into the healthcare field. I'll never know. But if I'm working on something, if I have a specific intention in mind, I may need different herbs that are calling to me. So I need to be able to walk across my room, which is not huge, but it's a good 10 foot, area. And I need that. I need to be able to grab and put back and change my mind and things like that. And that's okay because that's what works for me and my magic and my practice. And that may not work for you. And that's totally cool too. Whatever works for you. So, when I personally put up a circle, if I do it outside, I'm going to use those candle markers. If I do it inside, I'm not. I'm basically using my walls as my markers because the way my house sits, where my altar sits, is due north. So each of my walls is a specific direction, which makes it super easy for me, and I love that. And when we moved into this house, one of the first things I did was take out my phone and open up my Compass app and was like, holy shit, how did I get lucky enough that the room that I'm going to be using has perfect north of where I want my stuff to go. This is awesome. It was meant to be kind of things. It's kismet or serendipitous or whatever. So, if I'm working outside, putting up my circle, I'm going to lay out my tools, I'm going to place my candles, and then I'm going to focus internally for a few seconds and kind of breathe and find that peace. Now, a lot of times I just use my finger to draw my circle. I also use my wand, especially if I'm outside, because I've got a little bit more space to kind of to do it a little more elaborately. To basically all you're doing is directing that energy and directing that power, and it's that physical representation of where your focal point is. So I will start in the east. I will call my guardians and stuff, um, and ask for them to attend. Those kinds of things are very personal. Um, and I have a book here. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So this book is The Real Witch's Handbook by Kate West. I think I may have talked about it before. If not, it's a great book. It's got things kind of broke down and stuff, and kind of simplified. So some people like to draw out their circle first and then come back and call those elements and those directions and stuff. But however you want to do it, we're going to start with the east because that is the standard. Okay, so the element of air, which in the book here it says it represents our thoughts and should come first. So you're going to visualize the air itself. Think about clouds racing across the sky. treetops blowing, feel that breeze, that kind of stuff. Like if you're at the ocean and there's always that breeze, you're going to envision that. Now, one of the things you can say, which I'm quoting here from the book, I call upon the element of air to be with me, to watch over me, to guard, guide, and protect me during these my rites. Blessed be. Now that is just one way to do it, okay? And that's a super simple way to do it. I really like the way they put it in this book. And I like that it gives an actual example of what you can say. Because honestly, sometimes starting out, it's kind of awkward because you don't know what to say. And everybody, even me, goes, well, just, speak from your heart, whatever feels right, say that. Because you don't have to be as formal as this. You can walk up to your eastern direction and go, hey, East, I would really appreciate it if you join me. Is that disrespectful? If that's what works for you and that's the relationship you have with that direction, then who's to say it's not going to work? Who am I to judge? You do you. So, with what we just read, I call upon the element of air, you can take that and use that for all the directions. So once you finish with east, now while you're saying these things, you're going to have your dominant hand out and pointing in your direction. Usually I like to point mine kind of down at the ground where I know my border is going to be. And you're kind of, I personally envision like a white light or a shimmer. If I'm having trouble focusing, I'll do a shimmer because that's a little easier for me to see. So you're going to start that direction and you're going to walk or turn, depending on how big your circle is, and move to the south. And at that point, you can use the exact same wording. You're just going to change your words. You're going to change your direction. You're going to say, I call upon the element of fire, and and continue on. And then, like I said, you're still holding out that dominant hand, directing that visualization and bringing that border up. You're going to do that for all of your elements. And then you're going to come back to the east, which is your air. And some people like to say something official, like I close this circle. Some people just visualize it. I personally just visualize it because that's what works for me. So I kind of see that bubble close on itself and become whole, or that white light flood in with the rest of where that line started and then become this white bubble around me. It really is just what works for you. So I'm totally losing my train of thought. So once you've done that, you don't want to just walk out of your circle because now your circle is complete. You don't want to burst your bubble in a way, okay? So you also need to think about cutting your doorways. Personally, I like to take my hand and kind of draw a line and then part it like a curtain and then step out and then kind of close it behind me and put that curtain back and then go get whatever I need to get and then come back and do that in reverse. So I'm once again going to cut that line straight down with my hand, part that like a curtain, step back into my circle, and then reseal my circle. Now, some people don't do that. Some people do a full doorway and make it very official, like they're going to have their athame and they're going to go up and then across and then down and then like twist a doorknob and swing that door open and close it behind them. Both ways are correct. You can really do whatever. It is your circle. You have absolute control over your circle. Okay? That circle is keyed into you. Now, no one should just be wandering into your circle because that's going to disrupt your energy, it's going to disrupt your boundaries, that kind of stuff. Now, in my house, we have, animals, so they tend to do whatever they want, and that's totally okay. It is not going to hurt anything if little, I don't know, Lucky comes wandering into your circle. Animals are on a different wavelength. They kind of have carte blanche. They do what they're going to do, and sometimes they're needed in that circle, and you just didn't even know it, but they did. So they've joined you, and I've literally had that happen, and I'll tell that story at the end of this. But you do you, whatever works for you in opening and closing your circle. Just remember, if you do open and close your circle, make sure to close it. That's You don't want anything extra slipping in. You don't want anything slipping out. Okay. This is holding your energy and keeping all the bad things out, or whatever out. Whatever. So you're gonna have your circle closed. You're gonna be in there doing your work and everything. And once you finish and you've completed your ritual or meditation or whatever, because some people do, they will put up a full circle just to do their meditation. That's cool. I don't have that kind of discipline or time to do that. But if that's what works for you, fabulous. Love it. I admire your dedication, and I will never be that. I am envious and jealous. So awesome. But now, so when you're done, you finish your ritual, you're getting ready to clean up, you need to bring your circle back down because that circle has your energy in it and you want to bring that back into yourself. Okay? So you're going to just do everything in reverse. So you're going to start in your east, thank your element, thank you, air, for being here with me and for protecting me and helping guide me. I release you. Return to whence you came. You don't want to hold on to those elements. You want to put them back because they are there for us to use and borrow and pay homage to, but they are not ours to keep. You need to release them and put them back. Release that energy back. So going from the east, you would go to the north, and then the west, and the south, and then back to the east. Now, while you're doing this, you can have that dominant hand back out, or your wand, or athame, or whatever you drew your circle with, or something different if you want to change it up for closing. So you're going to visualize that bowl coming down. You're going to bring that white light or that shimmery energy back into you at each direction, okay, at each element. Bring it back in through that dominant hand. Some people use their non-dominant hand to take circle down. I personally don't feel comfortable with this, but that's because I can do so many things with my right hand. I can, do the most meticulous of things, and then my left hand is like, I don't know what anything is. I can't turn a page. I can't do crap. So I don't trust my left hand to pull my energy back in properly. So I use my right hand and do all of these things. That's my dominant hand. So you're going to pull all that energy back into you and then end your ritual with that. Thank the god or the goddess that you may have spoke with. Thank your elements, your directions. Thank yourself. Be proud of that because that takes putting up a circle and doing a full ritual requires a lot of energy. And that's why some people don't do it. I do quite a bit of magical workings in my altar room without putting up an official circle. But part of that is because I have cleansed and consecrated this room, and that stays up and awake and alive in a way. And I'll light a candle every few days to kind of recharge it and stuff. That's what works for me. Some people may think I'm crazy, but That's what works for me. Um, so I don't put up a more formal circle every single time because my room is kind of my permanent space. You know, now if I do something outside this room, then yes, I'm going to put a circle up just because, well, honestly, there's just a lot of bad shit out there, and I don't want it touching my good shit. Or there's a lot of good shit out there, and I don't want it touching my bad shit. Just depending. Because, like I've said before, sometimes you gotta put bitches in jars, and I practice in the gray sometimes. But that's me. You not have to do that. Please don't condemn me for that. That's what works for me. And if that's what works for you, fabulous. If you are a full on light worker and don't go anywhere near the shades of gray, you are a better person than me because, well, I'm a petty bitch. So, I probably shouldn't be, but I'm in my 40s and I just don't care much anymore. So, once you've, closed all your circle and stuff out, gather up all your supplies, go clean your stuff if you need to, if you've put wine in a chalice or whatever, you may need to clean all that out, offer it back to the earth, those kinds of things. Put all your stuff away, take care of your tools. If you are going to use tools, take care of them. Okay? Even if they're that big lighter, you might need that to, well, light a cigarette one day. So put it somewhere where you can find it again. And don't do like me and just lay it down and be like, where the hell did I put my. Oh, there it is. So there are a lot of different ways you can do circle. Some people, and here's the one I've never understood personally because I don't feel that way, but it works for some people. Some people envision a bubble expanding from their body to encompass them in their space, and they're just pushing that bubble out in all directions at the same time. I ain't got that in me, girl. I do not have that in me, but bless those that do, I guess. And I just realized how many little southern Christian type things I say, like, oh, bless their heart, and well, Jesus Christ. And so y'all hopefully don't take offense to that. I was, born and bred in the Baptist church and got away just in time. But some of those things I think are just bred into us. So, back to our circles. I know I keep squirreling. Always give thanks. Thank those elements, thank those directions, thank your gods and goddesses, thank yourself. Give yourself a little grace. If it didn't go perfectly, so what? Did anybody die that wasn't supposed to? Eh, it'll be fine. Just let it go. I know, let it go. Nobody wants to hear that crap anymore. So, those are our basics on circle casting. The book, again, that has a great basic, less formal way to do it is The Real Witch's Handbook, a complete introduction to the craft by Kate West. The more formal information came from our Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft. That's Raymond Buckland, which is a great book, but it is very, very formal. And that does not always work for everybody. It doesn't work for me. Now, I do like to flip through it and kind of get the basis of the history and stuff. And some people care about that. Some people don't. Both are right, and that's all right. So, next time, we're going to talk a little bit more about our elements. And maybe go into some of the timing for casting and ritual and stuff. I guess we'll just have to see. Alright? Well, thank y'all for joining me, and I'll see you next time.